Next I'm going to use a screwdriver size 0.8. It's a pentalobe size 0.8, and we're going to need to remove these two screws in the bottom of the phone right here. So go ahead and remove those screws. Alright guys, so the next thing I wanted to show you in this kit is a suction cup. You want to press down, make sure that it's sealed good. You want to stay close to the home button but not over the home button because it will break the suction. So what we're going to do also is this really thin pry tool comes in the toolkit, and what we're going to do is try to get right above this speaker right here. We're going to try to slip in right here very carefully in between the frame and the screen right here. As you can see, it's starting to separate a little bit. Then we're going to use like this guitar pick or something thin that you have that you can pry around all the way around. I wanted to talk about there's a waterproof adhesive that goes all along the edge right here. And by doing this repair, it could affect how waterproof your iPhone 7 is, just to give you a heads up. They're not readily available yet, but there is some waterproof adhesive. I don't have any right now to show you, but I'll link to it in the video description that you can put back on here when you put your iPhone back together, and it should retain that waterproof seal. Like I said, they're not readily available yet. They're hard to come by, but they'll become more readily available as time goes on, I'm sure. So I just wanted to give that heads up that it could affect the waterproof of your iPhone 7. So next what we're going to do, I'm going to put a little upward tension on this right here. And I'm going to slip in right beside this thing here. I'll try to turn it this way to show you. And we're just going to carefully slide along here. We can remove this thing once we got it started. And we're going to cut through the adhesive here. Just come to this top corner here. Then we're going to go and we're going to slide along this side here. And now you don't want to stick in too far right here because there's some cables right here where the iPhone 7 screen is attached. So you want to just slide up through there. It's starting to separate here, as you can see. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove this suction cup now, and what you want to do, you can see it's starting to separate like this. Now the top has some tabs that stick under here, so we don't want to just pry straight up. Also, unlike other generations of the iPhone 7, the screen comes off and it tips like this, like a book. It doesn't tip up like it used to in previous generations. It tips this way, so just to give you a heads up about that. But what we're going to try to do is we want to bring this up a little bit, and if possible we want to cut this adhesive in here like this with this guitar pick or whatever you use. As you can see, it's starting to separate there, and there's that tab I was talking about. So you get it down far enough where you can tip it up like this. Then I'll set it like this so you can see. Then we should be able to just carefully tip it up like that. Now next, while you're holding the screen up like this, just past the 90 degrees, you don't want to put too much tension on these cables to tear these cables here. And we're going to use this screwdriver with a bit. It's called tri-point size 0.8. Now sometimes the manufacturers vary on the sizes, but in this kit mine's called 0.8. So Apple just kind of had to throw us for a loop and use a different kind of screw in this. So basically we're going to remove these four in this shield right here. So go ahead and remove those fours. Now make sure to keep them in the right order because they're different sizes. You don't want to mix them up. So next, after you remove those screws, I'm going to use the tweezers. You can use your fingers for this. And just grab this shield and set it off to the side with your screws. Next I'm going to use a plastic pry tool. You don't want to use anything metal for this. You can use a plastic pry tool. So let's go ahead and remove that connector. Remove that connector. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and disconnect the battery. Get that up out of there. So next, under this shield right here, there's two screws we're going to need to remove as well. It's holding this cable in here down. And this is a Phillips size 000. So you want to go ahead and remove those two Phillips screws. Next, we're going to use the tweezers and remove this shield right here. Set it off with your screws. Next, you want to grab your plastic pry tool and you can go right under this corner right here. Just carefully pry up that connector, and the whole screen comes out just like that. Now since we pulled the screen off here, if you look on the edge here, there's some adhesive residue here. We'll want to go ahead and use the tweezers or something and get that all off of there. Once you get it started, it should peel right off. If this video was helpful to you, I would appreciate if you would give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. That would help me out a lot. Just to give you a heads up, the charging port, which is located right here, in order to replace that, we're going to need to remove this whole logic board here, which is quite a process, and everything to get to this charging port here, because there's a connector that runs under the logic board and connects right here, and that's why we need to remove the whole logic board to get to the charging port. So it is quite a process, but it can be done. So now to change out this whole logic board motherboard right here, starts here and goes up around, we're going to need to remove a lot of different kinds of screws. So we're going to just take it one step at a time and show you how to do this. So let's get started. First of all, we're going to need a Phillips screwdriver size 000. Also on some screwdrivers it's called 1.5 by 45. What we're going to do is remove this screw right here and this screw right here on the opposite corners of this rear camera. So go ahead and remove those. Now that you've removed those screws, let's slide under this here. Get this shield off of here and set it off with your screws. Next we're going to use a plastic pry tool or your fingernail or something, nothing metal for this, and slide under this connector right here and pop it up. You just gently pull up and the rear camera will pop out just like that. Next we're going to use a Phillips screwdriver and remove these two screws in this part right here, this Phillips screw right here, and there's another one right here that we have to come in like this to get, and we need to remove that screw as well. So go ahead and remove those 4 screws. So now that you've removed those 4 screws, you can just grab this, set it off to the side with your screws. Next we will need to remove this screw and this screw. Then we can just grab this part, set it off to the side with our screws. Next we're going to remove this little clip right here with the foam piece attached. Go under there and unclip this part, so make sure that's unclipped and out of the way. Then you can use your Phillips screwdriver and remove that screw in there as well. Next we need to use our tri-point screwdriver size 0.8 tip, and we're going to need to remove these 2 screws right here. Next you can grab this shield and set it off to the side with your screws. Next we're going to turn this sideways, get in here to this connector, gently pry this connector up. Now we need to unhook these 2 antenna wires right here, so we're just going to unclip them by gently prying up on them. Then we can slide them out from behind this clip right here so they're loose. Now we're going to use a little flat screwdriver for this. Mine is size 2.0, yours may vary a little bit in size. And we need to remove this screw right here and this screw right here. So go ahead and remove those 4. Now next we're going to use our SIM eject tool, and we're going to remove the SIM card tray. Now next we need to remove this connector right here, so unclip that out of the way. Now we're ready to lift this board out of here. We need to watch a few things, we need to be very careful. So I'm going to use something plastic for this. You can just gently use your finger or something. So we want to carefully pry up here, and you want to watch this connector here so it gets past there. Then as we're tipping this up, we can kind of get it up past this right here, and then the whole board is free to come right out. So Apple designed this charging port in such a way where we have to remove everything to get to the charging port. In generations past, you didn't have to remove the motherboard because the connector stopped down here, but this they decided to run it under the motherboard. That's why we have to remove the whole board to get to this, because you risk damaging things if you don't remove it all the way. So next we're going to use our Phillips screwdriver. We're going to remove these 2 screws here, these 2 in the bottom of this, and remove these 3 screws in this thing, and these 2 screws in this plastic thing for now. We're going to leave a few of these here for now. Go ahead and remove them out of this, this, and this for now. And be sure to keep the screws all separate so you know how they go back together. Now that you've got all those screws out, first we're going to just grab this plastic thing, that part out of there, set it with your screws. Next we're going to use our plastic pry tool here. We're going to pry up on this connector right here. Then we'll grab this part and get it out of there. Then we need to use something and pry up under this tape right here. We have to be careful not to damage this. And you peel this tape up right here. Then you can just grab the loudspeaker, pull up here a little bit, tip it forward. And as it comes out, watch this antenna wire right here. It's in this channel right here. You want to pop it out of this groove right here. Then this whole speaker comes out. Then you want to go ahead and remove the rest of these screws right in here. So now I'm going to turn this upside down so it's easy for you to see. So now we're just going to carefully peel up on this. If you have to, you can use something to pry with as you go. You want to loosen the adhesive all the way. So next, now that you got this adhesive loosened pretty good, right in here and right in here there's a Phillips screw that we're going to need to remove. Next we need to unclip this little microphone right here, and you have to unpeel this one. This one's stuck down. So now that those are loose, you can go ahead and grab this part, and the whole part comes out just like that. Now this charging port also has microphones built into it, so if people are having trouble hearing you on speaker or off speaker, there's a pretty good chance that this part is bad, so you're going to have to replace this whole part. Now you also have to look if there's anything you need to swap over onto your new part. Well, there's a little clip right here. Is the only thing that I could see potentially that you have to swap over. Just check and make sure if there's anything that is different on your part from the original that you can swap over to your new part. So next, grab your new charging port, set it down in here. Make sure everything sits in there the way it's supposed to. So you can go ahead and get your microphones down in place. Make sure they're stuck down the way they're supposed to. This one sticks down, this one clips on. Make sure this one's tucked underneath the rubber part here. Then let's go ahead and put our 2 screws back in the very bottom right there. Now that you got your 2 screws back in, make sure this is stuck down. Then we're going to grab our loudspeaker and go ahead and connect this antenna wire in this top one right here where this metal part is. So go ahead and do that next. Next, before we get this loudspeaker down in our way, let's go ahead and put these 3 screws back in here. Next, grab your loudspeaker, set it down in here, make sure that it gets tucked in right down here where it needs to go. If you see that your screw holes line up, then you're all set. Then go ahead and put your screws back in the loudspeaker. Now that you got those 4 screws back in the loudspeaker, grab your Taptic engine, set it down in there. Now excuse my fingers, but we're going to go ahead and reconnect this connector right there. Make sure it's pushed down in where it goes. Then we'll grab this plastic part and set it down in there. Then go ahead and put your screws back in this part and this part. So next, grab your motherboard, set it down in here. Make sure to slip in under this thing right here. Now you want to watch this connector right here so he doesn't get in the way. Watch this connector up here, and watch these antenna wires right here. Gently get them out of the way. Now since it's setting down in there nice, let's go ahead and put our 4 flat-headed screws back in there. So just a double check, one goes down here, one goes here, one goes here, and one in this corner. So that's where the 4 flat-headed screws go. Also, when you're doing this corner flat screw, make sure to put that connector that's there underneath the screw, not above the screw. It has to go on first and then the screw goes through it. Now one thing that I found, if you use your Phillips screwdriver to get them started, if it has a good magnet on it, you can gently get them started a lot more flat and square with the Phillips screwdriver, and then once they're started, then you can tighten them up with the flat-headed screwdriver. That's just a tip that I've discovered. Next you want to get your antenna wires. You want to get the long one in first, and the short one in front of it tucked into that little holder right there. Then go ahead and refasten these two. There's no confusing where they go because one's longer than the other. So go ahead and refasten them. Try to keep them as square as possible and just clip them on there. Next, let's reconnect this connector up here. Now we're going to reconnect this connector right here. So now that that's clipped in, make sure to leave this one disconnected for now because that's the battery. We'll go ahead and put this Phillips screw in that goes right there beside that connector. Now that you got that Phillips screw, let's go ahead and reconnect this connector again. It's kind of awkward to show with my fingers in the way, but you can feel it click in. Next, let's set this shield down on here and put those 2 screws back in. Next, we'll put this thing in the corner here and put the 2 screws in there. Next we'll grab this part, set it down in there, and put those 3 screws and that one up top in there. Next we'll grab the rear camera, set it down in there, reconnect the connector, make sure it's good. Then we'll grab our shield, set it on top of there, and put your 2 screws back in. Next you can put your SIM card tray and any SIM cards back in. Now next, before you install the LCD screen, this is a time where if you do want to reapply the waterproof adhesive, then you go ahead and put it around all the way around on the edge here. So go ahead and do that next. If you're going on without that, then you can skip this step. Next, to reconnect the LCD screen, first we're going to connect this connector right in here, and this can be kind of a pain. Sometimes it's easier to like turn the screen a little bit, try to line this connector up the best you can. I would be careful what you stick in here as far as anything metal, but sometimes if you get it close you can press down with something like this or something to get it started, and then you can finish it with your finger. It's a little tricky with this camera right here, so you got to watch that. So now that you got that connected, now we want to reconnect these 2 connectors here. So do the shortest one first and go ahead and connect this connector. Now we can go ahead and reconnect the battery. So then you can grab this shield and set it down on top of here. Now this little foam piece that's right here where the camera will make this sit up for a little bit, but it'll compress once you put your screws in. So go ahead and put those 2 screws in. Now that you've got your 2 screws in up here, grab your shield here, set it down on top of this right here, and go ahead and put those 4 screws back in. So now that you got both shields all done and all the screws back in, let's go ahead and gently lay this down. Now as you got it here, clips right here, we want to get those started in there first. Then you can go ahead and just gently press that down all the way around. Then go ahead and put your 2 screws back in the bottom right there. And hopefully this video helped you. Thanks for watching.